Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good to see you all.
Recording in progress.
You too.
Okay. Yes, good morning indeed. Later this week, my family is embarking on a rite of passage, both joyfully anticipated and deeply dreaded. We are moving our daughter into her university dormitory and everything that implies. It's going to be a tough week. So, our lesson today is in some form of a confession that I have been experiencing symptoms of old timers' lament. I've come to recognize I am riding through the second half of my life, and the world of opportunity that once lay open at my feet has, through a litany of self-imposed cascading choices, begun to narrow its welcoming embrace. And that, finally, brings us to the subject of values and how our beliefs affect them. Now, I am not an expert on coins, so I did a quick dance through Wikipedia to glean a few generalities to illustrate our discussion here this morning. So please, disclaimer, do not make your investment decisions based on any figures or facts that I might offer herein, okay? We're just here to talk about spirit. So what I found out is that the people who mint coins will offer up all manner of reasons for putting dates on the coins. But I suggest the bottom line is that the primary purpose is simply to increase their value. Imagine if there were no date and the design remained static, a penny minted in 1804 and a penny minted in 2022 would represent the same value, 1 cent. But now some fun facts. I was able to find the current market value of an 1804 halfpenny coin, and that's roughly about $520. So if you bought a penny's worth in 1804, you'd be holding $1,000 in your hand or better. But the purchasing power of that 1804 penny is said to be just over 25 cents today. But when you consider what a penny would buy in 1804, I think it requires a lot more than a quarter to buy the same things today. It is obvious that 1804 penny, if undated, has lost most of its value. On the other hand, with a date stamped on, it gains historical significance, subjecting it to greatly inflated value on the collector's market. Simply stamping a date on that coin increased its purchasing power astronomically. You can get a lot with $1,000, even today. Almost a full tank of gas in some places. Our belief that something old and rare takes on some intrinsic value increases its purchasing power. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we heard Reverend Kent introduce the term levity regarding our spiritual nature. The term suggests rising beyond the confines of gravity, allowing our beliefs to rise beyond the appearances around us, such as the value of the dated coin rises out of all proportion to its stated value. The discussion we hear so much today is around our COVID life and our post-COVID expectations. I suggest we expend so much energy trying to return to what was, what we have known, that we forget our entire purpose in living is to grow, evolve, and expand our experiences and consciousness. I watched an interview with a young man, clearly a third my age, at a gathering of political conservatives where he expressed his idea of a perfect America would be a returning to the post-World War II era. Now, he clearly did not live in the 1950s or early 60s, so his only vision of that time must be through someone else's eyes. Now, I too would love to go back to those years, not because they were the perfect America, but because I was a child then. The world of possibilities lay wide open at my feet. I had no responsibilities. My parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents were alive and embracing me with love. I remember it fondly. But my experience is not everyone's experience of that time. We, in my family, were not rich by any standard, but we were allowed to become rich. No one was kneeling on our throat, denying us loans, or telling us we were not welcome. Too often we expend so much energy trying to make everyone else conform to our vision. We forget that they too have a vision. They too have memories and experiences. They too have a perspective, and we may not be any part of it. Holmes writes in the Science of Mind textbook, a true estimate of real values cannot be built on the shifting sands of time alone. In the long run, the merciful will obtain mercy. In the long run, we shall reap as we have sown. It is in our spiritual nature to grow and expand our thinking, to open our minds to new ideas and weigh them against the nature of spirit. Are they expressions of love? Are they creative ideas? Do they contribute to the beauty of life? Are they expansive and inclusive? Or do they stifle progress? Draw a line in the sand saying, this far and no further. Well, idle hands, hands that are not creating and expanding, these are the devil's tools. Remembering in Science of Mind, the devil too is just an idea. The belief in a power of evil, but just a self-imposed separation of self from spirit. Ernest Holmes writes again, but an idea has no real value until it becomes an experience. Our purpose is to build and improve our world. That is why we stamp dates on coins, to mark where we started and move forward from there, growing our market value along the way. We embrace the ideas that align with spirit and bring them into our human world of experience, expanding our common consciousness, redefining our common consciousness. We push the boundaries of the common consciousness, letting go of old ideas that we recognize are not in alignment with spiritual principle. We do not need to condemn the past to let it go, but we do need to let it go when it no longer serves our spiritual needs. See, that's one of the caveats of the Science of Mind. We can let go of an idea without condemning it. Simply recognize, hey, we're barking up the wrong tree. Well, let's try another one. We don't bog ourselves down in judgment, as fun as that may seem to be sometimes. We develop technologies that erase any excuse for subjugating our neighbors, any excuse for living in poverty, or ignoring the root causes of misery and suffering. It was easy to distrust others when we did not know anything about them. They were a threat. They were going to take our stuff. But how does that hold up in a world where I can talk with anyone on the planet as easily as I can talk to someone in the same room? Holmes writes again, the whole teaching of Jesus is to have faith and to believe. He placed a greater value on faith and belief than any individual who has ever taught spiritual truth. We are to believe in ourselves because we have first penetrated the invisible cause back of the real self. We are to have absolute faith in our work because we have positive convictions of the inner power which enables us to do this work. He's speaking principally to practitioners that are doing affirmative prayer work. However, it applies to all of us because we are all, in reality, practitioners when we understand how this universe works and apply the principles. Understanding how the universe works is key to having faith and believing in a power greater than us and using it to empower our lives and the lives of those around us. It is not God's will that we stand still and beg him, her, or it to be merciful upon us. It is for us to recognize that the Spirit power is merciful upon us all the time and is simply awaiting our direction to create for us from our belief. We are created in the image of the power. We are its arms, legs, fingers, and because we are gifted with freedom of choice, sometimes we are that crazy uncle for whom Spirit delivers without judgment. When we believe otherwise, believe the power exists outside of us, separate and aloof, we allow the mistaken idea of duality to creep in, we have lost faith and lose control over our experience. Lacking control, we do not recognize that we are still creating experiences from our own belief. We lose sight of our spiritual anchor point, reinforcing the mistaken idea of evil as real, creating the slide down which we are drawn into the rabbit hole where reality and illusion become indiscernible. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in Emerson's Essays, writes, "They who make up the final verdict upon every book are not the partial and noisy reader of the hour when it appears, but a court as of angels, a public not to be bribed, not to be entreated, and not to be overawed, decides upon every man's title to fame. Only those books that come down, which deserve to last, regardless of the hoopla on opening day, if it's real, if it's solid, if it's spiritually true, it will endure the test of time. In the human experience, the arc of justice, of spiritual awakening seems glacially slow. Our finite existence in this plane imposes a sense of urgency in us to see this thing completed, this journey to the Spirit. Let me offer this truth. It ain't gonna happen, okay? Not in your lifetime, my lifetime, or the lifetime of my daughter whose adventures are just beginning. The human journey back to our spiritual roots is the reward we are seeking. We stamp the date on our coins as markers in time to remind us of how far we have come. We value those markers because they demonstrate the growth of our market value as we more clearly understand the truth we are seeking. The markers grow in value as they become more and more rare, symbolizing the spiritual evolution we are experiencing as each new generation recognizes and releases mistaken ideas and embraces its spiritual truth. This is not an easy journey. We see from the example of the young man I saw interviewed, there are those who simply don't yet get it. We are not all moving at the same pace. We are not all awakening together, but one at a time, one soul at a time, recognizing new ideas. And there is a lot of support for a community that clings to the old ideas because it was comfortable, because it released them from any responsibility, and their experience was a good one. But they're forgetting theirs was not the only experience. Slowly, as a community, the common consciousness ever so gradually arcs toward justice and spiritual awakening. There will be spurts where it moves fast. I suspect the end of World War II was one of those periods when people recognized how horrible things can get. And there was a brief period where people worked together in ways they had never not done before. We've grown comfortable, maybe a little lazy. Hopefully it won't take something so tragic to spur us on again, but at least we know that one by one each of us carries the message into our world, into our sphere of influence. Each of us is, if you will, a missionary of how the universe really works. And people notice. People alter their behaviors based on what we demonstrate. We are messengers of spirit. We cast the old coins aside as we release the innocence of our youth. We reluctantly say goodbye to that which was so that we can step into what is about to be, unburdened by ideas that no longer hold up to spiritual scrutiny. Moses led his people into the desert for 40 years, so a new generation who never knew the experience of slavery could enter into paradise uncontaminated by those restricting beliefs. But even today's shiny new penny locked away in some forgotten trunk in a dusty attic or musty basement will one day be old and worthless on its face value, while becoming priceless for its importance as a marker for how much farther we have traveled. And that the diminishing field of choices before us may just mean we are closing in on our spiritual goal. And so it is. Thank you.